A very good afternoon to all our viewers and welcome to Live at the Watering Hole, where we start out this afternoon at Elephant Pan, where we have some elephants. Elephants among the Mopanis. Now, I'm Japie Potgieter and I'm going to be your host this afternoon, and I am very, very excited to see what we've got. It's always good when we start with elephants. It looks like a beautiful day here at Elephant Pan in Botswana, and we can see this pan is nestled among quite a unique and well-known habitat within this area. It looks like shrub mopani, and generally these trees grow on quite clayey soils, areas quite high in lime often, and the soils are also quite bleached underneath often, but perfect habitats for elephants. And this elephant here at the back looks quite wide compared to the one in front. And from what I can see, it looks like a female, and I'm wondering if she might be pregnant. Now, what's also interesting to see is all the water, as the southern part of Africa has received quite a lot of rain over the past rain season, but I can see that the drier season is starting to kick in, and you can see the changes in the leaves. Now, these Mopani trees, their leaves change into a beautiful orangey coppery color, but the leaves itself hold quite well right up until near the end of the dry season often, and therefore providing a well-needed sustenance to large herbivores like the elephant in particular. Elephants are one of the few animals that benefit from it. As Mopani trees, the leaves also very high. It's high in protein, so good food, but it's also very, very tough to break down and very, very tough to digest. It's also very high in tannin, and the tannin levels will obviously go up. Oh, there's some giraffe as well. I can see 4. Just 2 heads standing up at the back, comfortably looking above the shrub mopani, and then these 4 animals in the front moving through. What a sight. Elephant and giraffe. 2 of the largest and fascinating species within these habitats. And once again, as we all know, approaching the middle of the day, it is the best time around watering holes, and certainly one of the times to get to have the best views of certain species. Pretty amazing how these elephants just disappear in and amongst these mopanis. Quite a dense habitat. I can see a few larger trees sticking out. And in this particular area, I'm wondering, but very likely a bit of elephant influence that's actually causing the variation in the taller and the shorter trees. But what a sight. What a good way to start. We have a question. Our first question for the afternoon comes from Melanistic Marble, 2 years of age, and saying it is looking glorious at the Elephant Pan. Indeed it is, Melanistic Marble. I agree fully. Looks like there's lots of life here this afternoon. Very, very nice to see such a number of giraffe. Now it's interesting, some of these, looks like there's 1 or 2 male giraffes in and amongst this group. And knowing that these animals are very tall, the tallest of course, a big male giraffe can stand over 5 meters tall. And what's very interesting is if you roughly compare it to the trees at the back. It's almost, some of those trees are at least twice the height. So that means those are some very, very big mopani trees in the distance, and very beautiful to see. But brilliant start to the afternoon. I think let's go have a look at one of the other watering holes, see what's happening there. We're going to head over to Tau. Beautiful, some beautiful, beautiful blue wildebeest, looking all plump and shiny on the sunny afternoon here at Tau. You can see a bit of a breeze going, it seems like, and lots of life flickering in and amongst the small shrubs, birds as well as flying insects, butterflies, beetles. It's probably what the birds are after. And as you can see, some wildebeest mainly laying down, except for one feeding. It looks like the rest is just relaxing, chewing the cud, taking their afternoon quite slow. Oh, I thought it was a bird. It looks like it's a baby waterbuck. That's quite a surprise. Quite a nice little surprise to see. It goes to show these shrubs are much taller than they look. Good spot for baby waterbuck. This one is still quite young, probably from this last rain season. And often what waterbucks do is the mothers will hide their little ones near the water in thick shrub or bush near the water's edge. Although that little one looks a little bit older, I think it was probably just laying down and relaxing. But certainly gave me a surprise there. I was wondering what that odd looking bird was doing down there. And we can see the same with this wildebeest group. It looks like they are fairly relaxed. There's not much bothering them except the flies and the flying insects. You can see that proud male standing there, and a female that's not quite as easy with his approach. I think it's a bit late in the season. But hey, it always helps to try. I do think that you can see there's some younger wildebeest in between, but mostly females and the ones laying down. And I think because they have such close proximity to the water here and the nice open space, you can see the denser shrub line starting at the back as the terrain approaches the mountain behind them. And quite a beautiful little spot to lay down, enjoy the sun's rays as it's out, and last of the warm summer sun. It'll probably disappear quickly. Seems like this year South Africa is in for quite a rapid change in weather and cold weather in particular. And I think that these wildebeest are literally just taking advantage of this beautiful afternoon here at Tau on Madikwe Game Reserve. Now from here, should they need to go have a drink, if it gets too hot, they can easily just wander down to the water's edge. They've also got a very good view of the large area, and of course they have the numbers. I can see the cheeks bulging and the lower jaw rolling So these guys are definitely chewing the cud. One of the advantages of being a ruminant, or an animal with a 4-chambered stomach, as it's commonly known, kind of like the cow. They can stuff themselves early mornings, later in the afternoon, in the cooler periods of the day. And then while they relax, they can actually continue with their digestive process, which starts out by the animal regurgitating some of that chewed food that was partially chewed initially as the animal ate, and then just remasticating it, putting it back into the mouth, chewing again, and then it heads back down into the main stomach where the rest of the digestive process starts. But it looks very relaxed here, Tao. So I saw waterbuck male there as well, but I think we'll head over to Safari Hook to see what's happening there this afternoon. Another wildebeest and an oryx. Now this is a completely different cycle. So from South Africa to Namibia, and here we have a green line of trees in the background, which I actually have not seen myself at Safari Hook. Usually when I've seen Safari Hook, it is rather dull, with a grey line between the sky and the beautiful golden earth. But you can see this wildebeest on its own, it looks a little bit nervous. And even the oryx, or gemsbok, as it's known in Afrikaans. So I'm interested to see what's happening here. It also looks like there's a breeze going, so who knows. And we all know that around watering holes this time of the day, although it can be calm and relaxing, it can also be a hot spot for predator activity. But let's have a look. We have a question from Shina RD saying it's not a question, a comment saying it's a beautiful wildebeest, relaxing. Now, Shina, I'm assuming you were talking about those ones at Tau, where this one looks a little bit less relaxed. You can also see a little bit of a regional difference within the animal's appearance, or maybe this is just a younger animal, but interesting group of animals unique to this area, the springbok. Standing drinking. Now these are antelopes that often form large groups. Very active, very beautiful little antelope. We've got another question from Morgan asking, when are these wildebeest supposed to start migrating? Morgan, that's a very good question. In South Africa or Southern Africa, the wildebeest doesn't really migrate anymore. They used to migrate. They used to have smaller scale localized migrations in certain regions. That has changed over the past 300-400 years with the impact that humans have had on wildlife within Southern Africa. So they generally, in Southern Africa, especially South Africa, they tend to be more sedentary. They stay in one area. Males will often, in some areas, even keep, if there's enough food in the area, even keep territory throughout the season, the dry season that is, and knowing that when the rain season starts, it will be attractive to the females to make their way past that area again. So their behavior is a little bit different, especially from the well-known migrating wildebeest in East Africa. Even though it's the same species, just a regional variation. Their behavior is definitely a little bit different. But also, one of the things that affects this, one of the big things that affected it, is the provision of artificial watering holes. Back in the day, especially in southern Africa, there was a lot of watering holes provided in certain areas for the purpose of keeping animals within certain regions during a dry season. Whatever the historical reason for that may be, it works perfectly well for the safari industry, and it keeps animals in certain areas year-round to provide good game viewing. So, well, for instance, this wildebeest here is a little bit smaller. It seems like it looks a little bit more daunting, but while it's enjoying its drink, I heard we've got some elephants back at Elephant Pan. So let's head over from Namibia back to Botswana. Beautiful, what a sight. Elephants in the water, in the shade, in the water, elephants all around. This is a beautiful sight, and they all seem very relaxed, minding their own business. You can see, almost looks like each little group of closely related animals is just doing their thing. But closest to me on the screen seems like we might have two young rowdy bull elephants, and I'm interested to see how they might do during this drinking session. I always find that elephant herds, whoops, I think we lost Elephant Pan, but no worries, we're back at the beautiful safari hook. Back to chat about the wildebeest we saw here and the springbuck. You can see quite rocky soils around this watering hole, indication of the aridness of this area. This area is a little bit drier with less rain, so these watering holes provide highly sought after sustenance, especially when it's very dry. There we go, there's a couple of springbuck there. Now, springbuck, or springbok as they are also known, are very interesting little animals. And we've got a question from one of our viewers, from Benji, asking why are springboks sometimes called springbucks. So to be honest, Benji, bok is literally just the Afrikaans, one of the local languages in South Africa. It's just the Afrikaans version of buck, essentially, and a buck generally is not an actual specific antelope or animal, really. It can be used across the line for many different antelopes, but it usually refers to the smaller, more agile gazelles, as they're known, as springbok are. Springbok is a gazelle. But I've also heard people use it for animals in America, for some of the deer type of animals that side, in India, in South Africa and Africa, for some of the other antelopes, those within the family of kudu and nyala, all the way down to bushbuck. Bushbuck even has it in its name. But yeah, so buck is more of a general term used to describe some antelopes, where springbok is basically the Afrikaans, but the bok is also an antelope, or a goat. Wow, now the bigger guys are coming in. That's quite a nice size comparison there between the zebra, the oryx and the springbok there. Very, very beautiful to see. And I love the colors. The colors of these antelopes. You can see how well that springbok blends into its background there. By its counter shading, as it's known, the markings darker on top and lighter below to kind of fade into the background and break up the solid shape. Same as this oryx, which is smart. It's using the water outlet on the side, the cleaner water. And just in front of him, in front of that little well, there's a pied lapwing. Interesting to see these two with their black and white blending in quite well. Ooh. That's interesting. I wonder what happened there. Looks like he's coming back. So whatever that was, I'm assuming it was more of an instinctive, precautionary sprint rather than some actual danger. But the animals are a bit on edge. Even the wildebeest earlier. I'm not sure why that might be. But I want to get back to Benji's question earlier. Benji had another part, a second part of his question, which was what the scientific name Antidorcus marsupialis refers to within a springbok. Now, interesting, the marsupialis comes from the Latin word marsupium, which means pocket, or it translates to something like pocket. And it refers to the pocket or the skin flaps at the back of the antelope, which the males especially they use to display, but it's also something that gets displayed on excitement. And it basically runs along the midline of the back, from the tail upwards. And apparently it's got quite a very, very pleasant smell when the animals do pronk or display, and they have their characteristic jump, which kind of looks like a hop. And it smells similar to the smell of raw honey, actually. But yeah, that pocket, which is quite interesting, that actually distinguishes a springbok from true gazelles. So even though it looks exactly like some of the, or very similar to some of the East African gazelles, it's not a true gazelle. It is in a group of its own. And then but yeah, what an interesting little antelope. There's more zebra coming down now. You see some of them actually trying to eat some of the grass that's around there. You can see some actually looks like they're just nibbling off the top of the grasses as they're going past. So it looks like it's getting busy here around Safari Hook's watering hole. Good time to be here. You can actually hear the flies buzzing and the insects flying. But with this bit of breeze going, you can see the zebra's tails are quiet, surprisingly. Just every now and again. And the young zebra also seem to be playing a bit. This one almost looks a little bit unsure. Well, what a beautiful light blue sky. And once again, the animals got spooked. Now, they probably got spooked by each other there. But I do feel like there is a bit of an air of caution amongst the groups of animals in this region. I wonder where these zebra would have come from. Zebra do tend to travel quite a bit to come to water if there's no food in the immediate vicinity. But it's interesting to see them go after the grasses that's still around this pan, and that's one of the adaptations of a zebra that's quite well suited for them in different environments, as they basically go after all parts of the grass. They don't just go after the short grasses. And also being a hindgut fermenter, they can feed selectively, but they are more generally adapted and well suited to various different environments. You can see there's one remaining behind doing a good scratch there. Now often I've noticed if you get to these dead stumps, you go around and you actually notice the small black and white hairs that's stuck on them, and that's often from the zebras getting those hard to reach areas behind the ears, under the chin, the neck, the shoulders. And you can see that stump is perfectly suited for that. It's got a little bit of sharp corners. But yeah, what a beautiful sight here at Safari Hook this afternoon. I think as this zebra slowly starts to move away from here, I think we're going to head over to Tembe, where we've got some ellies.
When nature calls, Maui is the only answer. Satisfy your wanderlust and take to the open road in one of our fully equipped motorhomes. Boasting a fridge, gas stovetop, AC and bathroom, our motorhomes are comfortable and spacious, making any self-drive adventure in the Kruger or garden route memorable. Whether you travel alone, as a couple or the whole family, Maui has a motorhome for you. Maui, home where you roam.
Hi, I'm Cedric Dold, Wild Earth presenter and private guide. I'd love you to join me on safari. In September, I'll be at Valgevonden for a beautiful spring safari. And in November, I'll be tracking Wild Earth's famous leopards here in the Sabi Sands. Come and share the wildlife, the stories, and the adventure with me. Book now and let's go on safari.
When the Mara turns green, life surges, the air hums, the earth stirs, and the wild comes alive. Here, the wonder never ends. It just changes color. Every storm, every sunrise, every sweeping vista is an expression of wild magic. Visit the Masai Mara. Experience the magic.
When adventure calls, answer with Brits. Take on Southern Africa's most breathtaking landscapes from behind the wheel of a fully equipped 4x4 or SUV. From tents and bedding to a fridge and full kitchen gear, everything you need is already on board. And with 24-hour roadside assistance, you're free to go further and explore with confidence. Open roads, total freedom, no limits, just the journey ahead. Brits, equipped for adventure.
It's a difficult question to answer straight, to be honest. I think one of the largest known or weighed elephants to date, that's another thing that we'll get into now, but one of the largest weighed elephants to date is a male elephant, a bull elephant from southern Angola, which weighed over 10 tons. It was also a tusker. In terms of tusks, I don't personally know what the current record is for tusks weighed, but it is quite heavy from what I know. I also know that the elephants I know that some of the Indian elephants in history also had spectacular tusks. I know those genes are pretty much gone nowadays, but there were records in ancient times. I think it would also be difficult to say because there were probably lots of tusks used back in the day or acquired back in the day during the height of the ivory trade in the colonial era that might have had some spectacular records that nobody's aware of. And those lengths and sizes will probably just go down in myth. What a spectacular little mud party here. You see that elephant's going down all the way, trying to cover as much as possible with mud. And look at that young elephant just checking him out. And there's just more elephants coming in. I think it might get busy here with the elephants, which is never a problem in my opinion. Always happy to see elephants. Now that's quite interesting. You see that one elephant approaching there with her backside onto that male. And now the male's doing the same thing. I think maybe that elephant was trying to attract the attention of this male elephant deliberately. You can see now he's inspecting the other, looks like another female that's just come in. But look at that, I think this young female is probably trying to vie for his attention. An interesting dynamic happening here. Also interesting to see the elephant's priorities at this point, which was covering himself with mud. And this is something you often see when male elephants join a group or a herd, as they do inspect the females that might be ready, well, to check and see if there might be any females that might be ready to mate. But to get back to Willow's question, elephants, the longest tusks, I'm not sure of any numbers. I'll have to have a look into that to see what I can find. But I do know that, as far as I remember, the heaviest elephant weighed was a bull elephant from southern Angola, and it was just over 10 tons. There have been other records of elephants that weighed that much or near that, but I know there's also a couple of elephants currently moving about in certain regions in East Africa as well as Southern Africa, and they are expected to have similar sizes, although they have not been weighed. And then we've got a question from Leona asking, how do they weigh the elephants? Good question, Leona. There are various ways. The short answer is with a lot of effort and big machinery. They often weigh them on large scale scales, which would be either electronic, and with the help of large heavy lifting machinery they might pick up the elephant with ropes or straps that can support the weight of such a heavy animal, and they lift it up, and then they will place it on a very, very large scale to weigh the animal. But yeah, with a lot of effort, and it's only really something that as was able to be done from relatively recently. Now Nara is asking a very interesting question, asking, why do elephants have such a low reproductive rates compared to other large mammals? Nora, I'm not 100% sure that I'm understanding this question correctly. I think if I understand it correctly, from what I know, elephants, their reproductive rate is rather high currently in certain areas where they are well protected, and they have areas where they don't have human interference and adequate resources. In that case, their reproduction rate is actually quite high, and their annual population growth rate is very high, in some cases higher than 5%, up to 7% in certain national parks in southern Africa, which is extremely high. And that's also due to the high amount of elephants as well as the fact that they don't really have a lot of natural predators. But before we continue with our elephant conversation, I just heard that we've got a rare bird, the tortilla span, so let's head over there quickly to see what it is. Amazing! A Malagasy pond heron. Now that's not something you see every day. And an interesting thing about this bird, it's not that easy to identify as well, as it can be often confused with another bird which is similar but a little bit more common, called a squacco heron. Now these birds are quite shy, both of them. Now they can be tricky, and one has to have a good view of these birds, especially the skin, the bare skin patches around the face area. But indeed, this is a Malagasy pond heron, a little bit more stripy than the squacco. Other birds to confuse it with might be the younger greenback herons, but then there's also a size difference. But this is quite a sight. A bird I've been fortunate enough to see once before in South Africa. Not in Kenya, but this is quite a spectacular view to have it out in the open hunting like this. Now we got a question from Vic saying, how do juveniles differ in appearance from adults? Well, Vic, they look very similar. To be honest, they are not always the easiest. But I do know that the adults will have their breeding plumage, which is completely different, and that makes them completely white with a deep blue on the face and the bill and pink legs. So the bird goes through a complete molt and looks way different than what we're seeing currently. But yeah, this bird is quite a rare visitor to these parts, to be honest, and therefore any birder, any serious birder in Southern Africa's or East Africa's bucket list. I'm wondering, he's got the perfect habitat here. It looks very busy here around the water. You can see lots of little things moving up and down on the water surface or near the water surface. And typical habitat for this bird. And obviously, being such a rare bird is not something you would really find more than one together. And as the name suggests, it is a bird that is native to Madagascar. but indeed very, very special to see. You can see slow movements, moves not to disturb any of its potential prey items in the area. But this bird would go after small fish, frogs, especially frogs in these grasses and near the water's edge, and then of course insects as well, which it looks like there is numerous flying around near the water's surface. You can see that streaky appearance. Obviously when it's not breeding, it doesn't need to stand out, and therefore it certainly blends in quite well. But we got another question from Sean asking, up to what altitude can the species be found in Madagascar? Sean, that is a very good question, which I certainly do not know the answer to. I would assume that this bird is probably found more low-lying areas, marshy areas near the coast or near the flatter regions of Madagascar. But yeah, not sure at all. I would have to have a look into that to see. Have a look. He's just carefully inspecting this region. Oh, there we go. Got something. As he moves like that, he also, as he moves towards the corners of the watering hole, it almost looks like that's a big animal's track there. It created that little pool there, and often large animals like the elephant, for instance, can create these small little puddles on the outlying edges of the pond, and this certainly works in the favor of this bird, as you can gradually just push little creatures. Oh, quite a sharp precision for that peck down into the water. Not sure if it got something, I couldn't see, but I'm sure it did. But I've just got a tip to get back to Sean's question, up to what altitude the species can be found. Sean, from what I hear, it looks like it can go quite high, up to 1,800 meters above sea level. So from sea level all the way up to 1,800 meters. That is extremely high. That is very, very high for a bird like this. And it's also got quite a large range of habitats that it utilizes. So that's very interesting and something I didn't know. So thank you for your question, very interesting question. Nadia is asking, if a bird is rare in one country, would it be the same all over the world? Nadia, that depends on the bird, to be honest. Some birds are more common in certain areas. They just generally, that would be their native ranges that they are found in, and if they move outside of that, say a bird from North Africa or from Central or East Africa that makes its way down to Southern Africa, then that bird would be regarded as a rarity or a special bird to go and see within that region. Sometimes we tend to find certain birds don't move out of their general ranges that they are found unless for a specific reason, due to, say, like disturbing weather patterns in a region or something like that, or well, with climate changing over the last few decades, we certainly noticed a shift in the movements of certain migrating birds, which is interesting. But yeah, not necessarily. There are some birds that are generally just low in numbers, meaning that if they are found anywhere other than in their own home ranges that they are normally found in, they would still be considered as a rarity. But yeah, generally speaking, it's not necessarily the case that if a bird is rare in one country that it's rare in another country. It might actually be from another country and just not often seen in the region where it's regarded as a special bird. Like this bird, for instance, the Malagasy pond heron. Now, this bird is not as uncommon in Madagascar, but less common in southern Africa, and therefore regarded as a speciality. Although it's a very cryptic bird, very shy bird, so possible that it's often overlooked in certain areas as well, especially since it occupies such a large variety of habitats. But just look at that, it carefully places its feet down. Ooh, that was definitely an insect. It looked like it came from the level of the plants there and not all the way down into the water. But imagine how sharp this bird's eyes must be, because it would constantly be, you can see all the flying insects around, and it'll constantly be looking between the water's edge, on the vegetation. You can see now that the wind or the breeze picked up, the bird kind of went a little bit more erect to counter the force of the wind. So melanistic marble is saying that, wow, it's on the endangered list. That is also something I'm not sure about. But, yeah, it's something I know now. Thank you for that, melanistic marble. I didn't actually realize that. But I do see that it's changed quite a bit, its conservation status, over the last few decades, actually. So it does seem like it's something, maybe it is also one of the birds affected by climate change. But yeah, it's moved up to endangered in 2016. That's relatively recently. And one of the reasons I see, one of the biggest reasons, is because of the collection of eggs and young at their breeding colonies. And then of course the other one is the degradation of habitats, especially wetland habitats, and that would be due to very likely encroachment, farming in certain areas, or agriculture, yeah, well, human population growth, I guess. But it could also be because of climate changing. I know Madagascar is hugely affected by climate change. And in melanistic marble, you're also saying it's great views. Yes, indeed it is. It's spectacular views. I can certainly tell you that it's not near the same view that I had of one. When I had mine, I saw them against the opposite bank on a dam wall, and it was a rather brief view, and then the bird disappeared. So indeed, this is spectacular views. Now, Andy's asking, what vocalizations does this bird use? Andy, I am going to refrain from trying to mimic the vocalizations of this bird. I think for everybody's sake, but it's a very harsh, grating, kind of typical heron/egret call, I would describe it as. Then again, also, I haven't actually heard this bird make any vocalizations myself. I have only heard them over applications or recordings, and yeah, generally speaking, it sounds I'm not actually sure in what context those vocalizations were recorded as well, as it might be difficult to determine the exact reason for it. As often with birds, you have different calls for different reasons, and the call to attract a mate, for instance, is much different from a call trying to alarm others or tell a predator that it's been seen. But yeah, the best way to describe it would be similar to heron/egret like calls. Very, very harsh calls. This bird is having a field day out here in the water. Look at that, what a streamlined body, almost like with that spear-like bill. There we go. It's got something in its bill. It looks like a little fish. Now that is very, very unique to see. I like watching these birds hunt. Like a combination of elegance and extreme speed and accuracy. So I think this bird will probably continue doing this while the going's good. So since we've had such a beautiful view of it, I think let's go see what's happening at another watering hole. We'll head over to Rosie's Pan, where apparently we've got an elephant. Beautiful. A young elephant as well. What a beautiful view of Rosie's Pan. I also haven't seen Rosie's Pan in quite some time. I have been fortunate to be in Balule Nature Reserve not too long ago, and one thing that struck me, which I can also see behind these elephants now, is the greenery in the area. Benefited from the rain that the area's had, which is quite nice to see. And this is one of my favorite things about Rosie's Pan, is the fact that you have this almost like downward view onto the pan, where all too often you might have an elephant and then looking back over the rolling hills of the Balule. But while we are with some elephants, I have a few questions from some of our viewers. There was a question from Nara earlier, which I started answering, asking why do elephants have such low reproductive rates compared to other large mammals. Well, Nara, in short, I just wanted to say, like, their population growth rate is quite high. Once herds get to a certain size, generally they have a very good success rate in raising their young. But an elephant being such a large animal, it would be difficult it's very, very unusual for elephants to have more than one offspring at a time. And also being such a complex and intelligent animal, it takes a very long time for those elephants to mature and raise that little one, even with help. If the elephant cow has other offspring to help with, then generally that process can take a little bit quicker, but it does take a long time to culturize that little animal and train that little animal and to provide that little animal with what it needs. So generally speaking, elephants very rarely, like the gestation period for such a large animal is also very long, almost 2 years. So due to that, it also takes a long time, and the time between the birth of babies can often take 4 years or slightly longer. I know in very large confined elephant populations you'll often find that there is about a 4 years difference between the siblings, indicating that there is a very, very quick time. As soon as that baby's just of age and the mother gets ready to reproduce again, then a baby is conceived. So that does happen, and hence populations grow quite quickly. But yeah, to raise a baby elephant, it's long gestation period, especially for the larger mammals like rhinoceros, even for buffalo. These periods are a little bit longer. The animal needs a little bit more care, and the gestation periods are a little bit longer as well. So that's why it's probably slower than some other large mammals. And while we're still on that question, we got a related question from Sean, asking how quickly do baby elephants grow in their first year, and when do they reach adult size? Yo, Sean, that's also a good question. Baby elephants grow a lot. They can grow a massive amount. It depends on what time of the year they are born. They generally get born throughout the wet season, well, at least in southern Africa, and they can grow very, very quickly. They double their size within the first few months. But then again, it's for the first 2 months the baby elephant mainly drinks milk. Only after its first 2 months does it start to nibble on vegetation, and then only do they start to vary their diet. But the weaning process, of course, takes quite a long time, and a baby elephant drinks up to 4 years in some cases. So they grow very quickly. And then you're asking also, Sean, what age or when do baby elephants reach adult size? That's a difficult question for me to answer. I wouldn't really know how to say what would be adult size, because I would say sexually active depends on the little animal. It depends on the group dynamics. Elephants are also known to have teenage pregnancies, technically speaking. Now, young female elephants can reproduce as early as 12 technically, but they hardly ever do up until much later. From 16 onwards, but even that's quite early but it's not impossible. So I would say around that age, technically, they would be sexually matured, but then again, in a normal functioning elephant society, that age would probably be a little bit higher, so anything from about 17 onwards, if you want to define that as adult size. Same with elephant bulls, but then again, most elephant bulls, they sire their offspring between the ages of 35 and 45, so that's also much later, and even though they are also sexually mature at a much younger age. However, it's very difficult to say adult size, because elephants do keep growing up until at least 35 to 40, and you'll notice that some females and some bulls, they are massive at that age. But let's head over for more discussions on elephants. We're going to head from Rosiespan to Tembe, where we've got a very cool view of an elephant. So let's go have a look at that elephant, and we can discuss elephants more. Wow, this is a very cool view indeed. With that, I agree. We're fortunate to have a view like this. Look at that trunk just draped over the tusk. You can see this elephant is just inspecting the air, so it's clearly picking up on the scent of something. But look at the interesting marks on its tusks. You can see it's clearly something slid over it, and it looks like it's got these grooves in the marks left in the mud, so I'm assuming, well, okay, clearly this elephant is very interested in something. I wonder if it might be our camera, or maybe there's another elephant that's moved into the area. And how comfortable is that? Having tusks long enough to just drape your trunk over. Now we can clearly see here that this elephant is, obviously it's moving its head about, it's completely relying and focused on its sense of scent here. Just look at that trunk. That is an amazing view of the tip of the trunk and its finger-like appendages. Very, very prehensile, extremely sensitive. You can see the two nostrils that runs all the way down. What a fascinating animal. Definitely the scent of something that's affected this elephant's behavior. I'm not sure, I can't tell if it's another elephant or not. It did move away from this mud patch quite quickly, which it normally does if there's another larger elephant in the area, but or something out of the ordinary. But we had a question earlier from Benji asking what senses do elephants rely on most. Benji, I can say that definitely their sense of smell is one of their biggest ones, if not the biggest, and it is what they put most of their trust in and they rely on most. Sense of smell is definite. It tells them exactly what's around them. It also shapes their social relations and drives their social relations. It plays a very, very big part. And we can clearly also see from the size of the trunk, or an appendage such as the trunk, is a clear indication that this animal's evolved to rely heavily on its sense of smell to go about its business and survive. They do also have excellent hearing. They've also got these hair-like appendages, which looks like hair to us, but they are essentially extended nerve endings. And they can pick up on the tiniest of vibrations. Aha. Okay. Here comes another elephant. I don't know where exactly this elephant came from, and it's difficult to get an understanding of the lay of the land below the camera's angle, but I do see what seems to be swollen temples on this animal, and it also looks like some secretions, so I'm not sure if maybe this animal might be going into must or coming out of must, and that might also be another reason why that elephant reacted in such a way. Because I don't think that elephant was done spraying itself with mud, and probably didn't want to leave its nice mud pool, but it made way. And an elephant bull in must going into or coming out to will generally be avoided by others if it can be. Like most mammals, they try to avoid any confrontation. But we've just lost that feed, unfortunately, so we're back at Rosie's, which is no problem, but with more elephants. I enjoy watching elephants going down a slight incline. You can see the weight of the head clearly come into effect then, just bobbing as they go down and the ears flapping. But yeah, I think it's getting to a warm time of the day now where that little elephant probably needs some shade, and that's why they moved over here. They had something to drink, and now they can relax a little bit. You can see I don't see any ears moving currently. I don't even really see there we go, a little bit of the ear flapping. Now one often gets to see elephants stand like this, and they just stand and they seem like they're not doing much. And you can't help to ask yourself, what are they doing? But generally I'd say they are resting, if I had to take my guess. It looked for a moment like this baby was laying down on its side, but I see now it's not actually. It's just the grass that's so tall. Now those grasses in the shady spots amongst the trees will also be where some of the last nutritious grasses will be found at this time of the year, as most of the grasses that would have grown in the height of the rain season, they tend to move their nutrients down to their roots once the drier season starts to kick in. So more and more areas will become less sought after by the elephants, and they'll go into specific regions, and they'll start to move from generally getting to feed anywhere within their habitat to just to looking for specific areas with specific food sources. But yeah, I think it's safe to say this elephant's putting its head into the bush. It's looking for some grass at the base there in the shade. But I think these elephants are probably taking a bit of a rest and giving that little one a bit of a snooze. And even though they are resting, they might still be standing and not laying down. And you often find that the larger elephants will, because elephants can move and they can move large distances, and it's difficult for these little ones to keep up with the pace of the parents. So and the larger elephants know that very, very well. They know when and how far they can push the little ones, so they often make time during the hottest part of the day to find a shady spot or a nice spot to rest, just to give that little one some time to recuperate and regain its energy. And of course they'll stand in a way where the little one's protected by the bulk of the two large elephants on either side. Now we got an interesting question from Connor, asking how do calves form strong bonds with their mother and other family members? Connor, that's a very good question. It actually forms a very important part of an elephant's entire being. That little elephant there. And actually, just before I read your question, I was thinking to myself what the relation is here. What exactly are we looking at? Is it the mother and an offspring and a sister, or is it the mother, an older offspring and a young one, or is it just two sisters and a young one? And to be honest, I wouldn't be able to tell, but all I do know is that an elephant, especially a female elephant, will pretty much spend her whole life near her mother. Whenever that little elephant gets born, the presence of the mother is constantly there. They have the trunks, they constantly reassure each other of their proximity from each other. They are constantly near each other. Initially it starts out just with gentle touches by the trunk, keeping contact with the mother, constantly not moving away. And as they grow older, that will turn into a fully perceptible idea of distance from the related elephants, and of course they'll move into the same areas, they'll eat in the same areas, and that is how this bond gets formed. And they'll never move away. A young male elephant will eventually get to a point where that bond will, I don't want to use the word weakened or weaken, but they do get to an age where they do want to explore for themselves and move away, as they have different needs, they have different requirements. The older they get, and they move away and they form bonds with other male elephants in groups of all males. Some much older elephants often spend a lot of time on their own, but they still have their relations with some of the larger bulls in the area. But for these animals, everything is about that bond. Their whole survival, the whole herd dynamic revolves around these bonds, and closely related elephants and animals will always be nearby each other without being too far. You find that even when bull elephants, even after they have left their herd, they do sometimes, if they have the opportunity to move back to that herd or into that herd, just to reconnect with that mother. So also that elephant's mother is there from its first breath all the way through to the point where it can either look after itself properly, or to the point where young elephants become mothers of their own. And even then, that bond will still last, that bond between the grandmother and her offspring's offspring. And you can see now it looks like that little baby is laying down. Something much easier for a young elephant than an adult. So she's definitely taking a good rest there. I think even these two older elephants will take a little bit of a rest here. Even if it's just calm, might doze off a little bit, but adult elephants often stand up sleeping. It's just easier for them if there's no immediate environmental plane that can help them getting up. But yeah, I think it's safe to say that these elephants are taking a rest just to let that little one gain some of its much needed energy. So while this little elephant is resting, we are gonna head over to go look at some baboons.
When nature calls, Maui is the only answer. Satisfy your wanderlust and take to the open road in one of our fully equipped motorhomes. Boasting a fridge, gas stovetop, AC and bathroom, our motorhomes are comfortable and spacious, making any self-drive adventure in the Kruger or garden route memorable. Whether you travel alone, as a couple or the whole family, Maui has a motorhome for you. Maui, home where you roam.
Morning, you two. Hello.
When adventure calls, answer with Brits. Take on Southern Africa's most breathtaking landscapes from behind the wheel of a fully equipped 4x4 or SUV. From tents and bedding to a fridge and full kitchen gear, everything you need is already on board. And with 24-hour roadside assistance, you're free to go further and explore with confidence. Open roads, total freedom, no limits, just the journey ahead. Brits, equipped for adventure.
Around like it's almost too good to be true to have a well of water like that all to oneself. Maybe she's looking for some others. It looks like a female. And judging by the size of that belly, she might even be pregnant. Maybe that's why she's carefully inspecting the area. The fact that she's on her own. Unusual for females to be completely on their own. I mean, giraffe, herd dynamics are interesting, and even though we might think that we're only seeing one giraffe, it might actually often be part of a group just spread out over a wide area. But it looks like it's not an easy decision, this, to have a drink. Now, before we lost Lentore, I was talking about social rules from Shelley's question. How do calves learn social rules? It's something that gets indoctrinated from a very, very, very early age. Generally speaking, and this is something I do appreciate about the natural world, is there is always some sort of an order prevailing, and with animals especially, they do have their personal boundaries and acceptance of other creatures. They understand the natural order of things, so to speak, quite well. Social rules are instilled from a very, very early age, especially the more complex creatures. It's almost like they have cultures developing. I know pods of whales, elephants, the great apes, they are regarded as cultured animals, and they do tend to adhere to strict social rules that that little animals get born into from a very, very young age, and it constantly gets instilled while the animals grow up. That's quite a spectacular sight. I do enjoy watching giraffe drinking. Looks like she's done. Or maybe she's just gonna go from a different angle. See that long tongue coming out there? Fascinating animal. The long hairs on the lips. And they often gather quite a bit of moisture when they drink, or while they drink, so they often end up licking them afterwards, cleaning off whatever moisture might be there. But now the nice thing about this little well is it's not as low as usual, so it saves the animal a little bit of effort. Also, this particular watering hole is quite a deep dip, so this allows the animal to stay up high on the edge of the watering hole, and therefore provides a position of vigilance, especially for a lone female giraffe. Nara's asking, how do giraffes drink without choking or spilling water back out during the awkward head lowering position? That's a very, very good question, Nara. Never thought about it that way. You know, the things people usually think about when they see giraffe drinking is how such a tall animal don't get dizzy and they have to put their head up and down like that. And we know that happens from a complex network of small little veins just below the brain, and that kind of disperse the blood flow in a way that it doesn't go directly into the brain and out. And then of course the animal has has a specialized vascular system. It helps with the transportation of blood throughout the body. It's got a very high blood pressure comparatively. It's got a slightly larger heart than normal. All of these are adaptations to help the animals with the issue of blood flow during such instances. But how do they drink without choking? That's an interesting, I guess, the same as any other animal. They still have their esophagus and their windpipe, and that's where the water would go down. Like the nostrils are still placed well above the lip in order not to put it under the water while drinking. It's got that long tongue. Well, you can see that. Ah, there we go. There's another giraffe. Amazing. I wanted to say it. It's unusual for females to be on their own. Unless they've got young in an area or they are about to give birth. Now this one seems slightly more relaxed and less concerned. It's also just enjoying a bit of a grooming session there from its 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ox pickers. Yeah, it's not coming in for a drink. Looks like it's also chewing the cud. You can see the ears are drooped down. It's probably allowing or providing the oxpeckers with a chance to come and clean that area. There it looks like some of the oxpeckers flew over to this giraffe. You can see this one's way more vigilant. Also a nice spot to stand in the shade. There we go. I think these giraffe have had their moment here at the water. You can see that one moving off. Didn't seem like it was too bothered to have a drink, or maybe it did before this one came in. But I think this giraffe might probably move off from here. So I think what we might do is, I heard there's some Ellies at Rosie's pan, so maybe let's head back over there and go see what's happening there. Still some nice resting elephants. It's quite an interesting contrast to see these relaxed, or the relaxed state of these elephants compared to the normal energetic interactions that we see in areas like Tembe, or even at Elephant Pan this morning or earlier today. And this is quite an intimate moment within an elephant's day, actually, to be honest. Well, I think that way. Like often elephants, they are such large animals, and because they're so large, it takes an enormous amount of energy to sustain the bulk and to move about. And the other thing also with elephants is they're quite an ancient mammal, and they don't have a particularly effective digestive system. So it takes a lot of food to gather enough energy to power this body. Up to 48 hours for food to move through their digestive system. There's a good stretch from that elephant. But because of the fact that they such a large body basically just rely on plant material with comparatively low energy levels, it means that they need to eat a lot, of course. Roughly 6% of an animal's body weight, depending on the weight of the animal. Which in some cases can be as much as 200 or 150 to 200 kilograms of wet plant material a day. Now that takes a long time. That'll take all day almost. And hence, sometimes I've heard some statistics or read some statistics of up to 22 hours a day, up to 20 hours a day, 18 to 20 hours a day that these animals need to feed. That is true. To some extent, they do spend a massive, or the majority of the day feeding. I guess it also depends on the area, the habitat, the available food resources. So when we do get to see them rest, it's actually only a short period of their day's activity, and often missed. Now, we got another question from Willow. Can elephants go days without sleeping? Willow, I guess so. I do know that they don't sleep quite the same as we do. They sleep often in these short spells of a few minutes, like 20 minutes to half an hour at a time, or 40 minutes at a time. And generally speaking, like if an elephant feeds for about 18 to 20 hours a day, it means that 4 to 6 hours a day is not necessarily spent sleeping one go. It would be broken up into different spells across the time of the day. Now, I've often seen with elephants, what I've noticed is middle of the day when it's very hot. That's when they'll utilize that time. Or sometimes early morning, especially in the winter time when it's quite cold. Then they'll have those moments of rest up until the time when the sun warms them up a little bit, and that's usually when they tend to have their rest periods. But I do know that there have been studies done on elephant sleep patterns, and with African elephants in the wild, they have found that some sleep as little as 2 hours a day, and they're regarded as the mammal that sleeps the least out of 24 hours. Interestingly enough, I find it fascinating. One of the big reasons they attributed to this little sleep, besides its obvious biological reasons, is also social pressure in certain areas. And then depending on the time of the year and the region, also resources and the availability of it. Proximity to human settlements, lots of things that can determine the elephant's sleep patterns actually. And I think it's quite a complex issue. But fascinatingly enough, in areas with high concentrations of elephants, they do tend to get affected by the presence of other big herds of elephants, especially if they're non-related. So yeah, elephants have interesting sleeping habits. But yes, I would say that at some points elephants would tend to, in the general word or sense of sleep, probably not sleep much in days, especially if they have to move far to find food or water during times of need. But they will try and find a time to have some sort of a rest at least, and just break that rest up into different or shorter periods of time. Just look at that little one. I think that little one is probably having a good snooze currently. A rare luxury reserved to young elephants, I guess. Although I've seen large male elephants sometimes find good spots and then just sleep flat out and snore. But let's leave this little elephant. I heard we've got a very cool bird over at El Doño. I would like to go see what it is. Aha! This is a very cool bird indeed. And to be honest, I'm not 100% sure what it is. I would go with African hawk eagle. That would be my first guess. But I was hoping maybe for something, well, I wouldn't say more exciting, because it definitely isn't more exciting, but I was hoping maybe for something else. But still, a spectacular bird, one of my favorite, of course, and in a rare moment that we actually get to see it bathe. Something that happens during the heat of the day, of course, and I can see it looks like it's a very nice hot day here at El Doño. You can see the birds gaping a bit, so it's clearly stretching, trying to get the moisture in between the feathers. And it must have sat nearby on one of those umbrella thorns nearby. Very, very tall umbrella thorns in the background here, and probably just waited its chance between all the elephants and the eland and all the other creatures that come here, and swoop down the moment and notice that there's nobody around. But of course, the heat of the day, best part, because after this the bird can move out of the water and then the sun can dry out the feathers, burn off some parasites. There was a quick glance up at the sky, maybe just to check if there's any other birds with the same idea. But this is very, very amazing to see. You can see the feathers are nice and puffed up, opening up for the water to get in. That's where the bird will also cool down a bit. We do see sometimes in the middle of the day when it's warmer, we do find that large raptors like this will come down, they'll come and wash. Can you imagine being a predatory bird? It will have a whole bunch of skin parasites, leftovers from food. So on the feathers, often will get on the feathers while it's feeding. So the bird does need to come down and have a wash every now and again. And Lady Macbeth is saying, how lovely. Indeed, Lady Macbeth, this is spectacular to see. What's also interesting about this bird is that it's only one. They're normally in pairs. And Jess is asking, what is the size differences between the male and females? Now, Jess, one of the interesting things between male and female is, generally speaking, the female is slightly larger than the male, and also slightly darker. No, apologies, actually not. The female is slightly, it's not often as dark, even though if the two sit next to each other, it's very difficult to tell the difference. But generally speaking, the females are considered slightly paler, not quite as neat, dark, or with such a sharp contrast between the black and the white as the males have. And then of course the female weighs slightly heavier, technically slightly longer from generalized measurements, but yeah, like I said, I wouldn't necessarily be able to tell the difference if I have the two sitting next to each other that easily. Benji is asking, do birds ever fight over waterholes? Indeed they do, Benji. The most vicious fights I've seen between the smaller birds, the finches, the waxbills, raptors, I've seen in birds of prey, I've seen vultures fight over spots against the water's edge to get a good wash. Raptors, I haven't really, they usually, like, it's rare to see more than one raptor on the water's edge at a time. I do know that we do get quite a bit of competition between fish eagles and other birds of prey near the water's edge. That I've certainly seen, and I've also seen some interaction between owls at night near the water. Just look at all that butterflies, all those different colors. That is spectacular to see. I can see black ones, blue ones, orange ones, yellow ones, white ones. That's amazing. There are so many. I wouldn't be able to tell you what they are, but that is incredible. Oh, amazing. What a welcome surprise. An elephant. And there's those beautiful big umbrella thorns in the background with a spectacular East African sky and an elephant that's disappeared. Well, from one beautiful spectacular scene, let's have it over to another with lots and lots of elephants at Naledi.
When nature calls, Maui is the only answer. Satisfy your wanderlust and take to the open road in one of our fully equipped motorhomes. Boasting a fridge, gas stovetop, AC and bathroom, our motorhomes are comfortable and spacious, making any self-drive adventure in the Kruger or garden route memorable. Whether you travel alone, as a couple or the whole family, Maui has a motorhome for you. Maui, home where you roam.
I'm Butch James, World Cup winning Springbok fly half. Rugby has taken me to many incredible places around the world, but it's Africa's wild places where I feel most at home. This July and August, after the Springbok tests against England, Wales and the All Blacks, join me on a series of luxury safaris. There we'll share some rugby stories, open fires and some incredible wildlife sightings, all under the African skies. See you in the bush.
Even a hyena coming into the action as well now. Oh my word! She's stalking the hyena now. Leopard, hyena, lion, all together in one shot. Oh. This is action-packed.
When adventure calls, answer with Brits. Take on Southern Africa's most breathtaking landscapes from behind the wheel of a fully equipped 4x4 or SUV. From tents and bedding to a fridge and full kitchen gear, everything you need is already on board. And with 24-hour roadside assistance, you're free to go further and explore with confidence. Open roads, total freedom, no limits, just the journey ahead. Brits, equipped for adventure.
So the top layer of the water might be a bit dirty with debris, so they will drink a bit, spit that out and then go down to the cleaner water. So there is a few different reasons. Splashing, that could just be to clear the surface of the water, test the water, maybe just acclimatize the trunk tip as well. Sometimes the water, depending on the time of the year, might be a little bit cold. The trunk tip is a very, very sensitive part of the animal's body. Yeah, those are a few reasons why they could be doing that. But just look at this. Now I see there are some. You can see these guys here on the left on the water's edge. They are definitely look like they're using the muddy parts there, so they're covering themselves. It looks like it's a decently hot day here in Lady Bush Lodge in the Kruger Park. So I'm assuming that these elephants are definitely seeking out the cleaner water, and then the larger water body using that for some cooling down. You can see, look at the thick mud blotches on this elephant. Obviously after doing that, I would think that they would probably not want to drink from the watering hole itself. But what a commotion on their way here. You can see the determinedness and the eagerness to get to the water on their way in. And now kind of all that commotion has died down a little bit. Now it's back to standing around and some waiting their turn. This elephant in front looks like it really wants to get in there, but it sees that the baby elephants are drinking. And there we go. Oh, almost. Okay, that's quite interesting to see. Maybe that elephant, well, I'm sure that elephant was quite aware that that might happen, that female elephant that's just turned away would probably not like her barging in and drinking while the little ones are having their drink. Now the elephant seems quite protective. There are quite a few babies here. But she's back. So let's see. Eagerly took her gap there. What a spectacular show to end our afternoon here around this tiny little well at Naledi. Certainly a very, very productive site, this. James Hotham. James says, they're all trying to see the TV. Look, Mum, it's me. And Wildlife Lady is saying a very popular drinking well this morning. Lovely to see so many elephants. And that I agree with completely, Wildlife Lady. These elephants are all vying for the camera and the water. It looks like. But I love this sight of this decent size herd with all different sizes, from young to old. Amazing to see how such a large animal can all get along around such a small watering hole. Now that is quite clearly evidence of those strong social rules and strong ingrained social structure that these elephants adhere to and grow up with. Ooh, there's a tiny baby on the other edge. I just saw it poke through the gap between the elephants closest, trying to get some water. But I think on that note, I'm going to say goodbye from all of us here at Live at the Watering Hole. Thank you so much for joining us. And I hope you had as much fun with elephants as I did this afternoon.